Well, good morning, friends. It's Mrs. McCormack here. I'm with you today to make one of my favorite recipes with Benny. If you know anything about me, he's usually right by my side. I'm in my old farm kitchen in South China, Maine, and I'm here with a recipe that comes from a favorite cookbook, the Fanny Farmer cookbook, for any of your families that know this one. It's a thick one. It has a great quick bread recipe for banana bread, and a quick bread recipe is one that does not require yeast. So the ingredient to make it rise is baking soda, and that's why they call it quick. I've pre-measured everything today so that this will be a quick process for you, friends at home, to know how to make banana bread. I've added a few ingredients, and I've substituted a few ingredients, so we'll talk about that as I go through. I'm going to start with my wet ingredients, and I've already got my bananas mashed. I use something like this, a potato masher. So it's already done for us. The riper the banana, the better, because they're sweeter. They're also easier to mash. So don't get rid of those bananas if they're starting to go. So I've got my mashed bananas in this bowl, and to it I'm going to add 2 eggs that are already whisked. So here's a whisk, and I've already done that process, so in it goes. And then I've added an ingredient to this old recipe, and that ingredient is vanilla. Vanilla just gives it a little bit extra flavor. So I've pre-measured vanilla, and it's in this little bowl. I don't know if you can see it. It's sliding around in there, but it's liquid, and I just need 1 teaspoon of that. So you'll see it go in the bowl with the egg and the banana. So 3 bananas, 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon vanilla. Mix that up well, and you'll see how I do that. I'm actually going to just use my spatula because this will be what I use at the end to put the dry ingredients in. So now I've got all my wet ingredients done, and I'm going to put this over to the side and mix together my dry ingredients for you. So I changed the recipe, I said, and one thing I've done to make it a little bit healthier is combine white flour and whole wheat flour. So first I have my 1 cup of white flour. And you can use 2 cups of white flour, or you can substitute 1 of those cups for whole wheat. So here's my whole wheat flour going in. So that's the first of the dry ingredients, 2 cups flour. Next I'm going to add the baking soda, and it's 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So for those that want to know a teaspoon measure, this is a teaspoon. And 3 of these equals 1 of those big tablespoons, which looks like this. Okay, I've also got 1 teaspoon of salt pre-measured. It's going to go in with the dry ingredients. So now I have 2 cups flour, 1 teaspoon salt, and 1 teaspoon baking soda. And of course, any quick bread or anything yummy really has sugar in it. So this recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and it's pre-measured in this container. It doesn't go to the top because there's only 3/4, not 4, and this is what the quarter measurement is. So there were 3 of these into this cup, and it goes with the dry ingredients. And then I'm going to use this whisk to mix it together just a little bit. And the one thing about quick bread, you don't really want to over mix it once you've added dry ingredients to the wet, because it might make it kind of tough, the bread tough. And so you definitely want your dry ingredients mixed well. So now I've got all those dry ingredients mixed in this bowl here. I have my wet ingredients ready to go here. And I'm going to put the dry ingredients in with the wet. So I'm just going to pour it right in. And then I said, another thing I've done to change this recipe is to not only include chopped nuts, make sure someone helps you do that unless you buy them pre-chopped. So I have a 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts going in. And at the same time, I'm going to add my favorite, chocolate chips. So the chocolate chips are also measured out to a 1/2 cup. They're going in. And I've now got everything mixed in the bowl, or not mixed yet, but in the bowl to mix. And once that's combined, and I said don't overmix it, we're just going to put it in a greased bread pan. And I have that right here for you to see. So it's already greased and ready to go. My oven's preheated to 350, and it cooks for about an hour, depending on your oven. So I'm going to mix it. I'll put it in, show you what it looks like in the pan, And as I do this last final mixing, I'll remind you of the measurements for these ingredients. And then I'll show you what it looks like afterwards, because I've actually made a recipe earlier this week, and I froze half of my bread and I pulled it out this morning so that you could at least see what it looks like. The interesting thing about this recipe is that there's no oil in this recipe. What moistens this recipe are the bananas and the eggs. So it is pretty healthy. So let's go over the ingredients. I'm still mixing a little bit. I probably have, sometimes you might have a large egg or a medium-sized egg, and so this recipe looks like it could have used a little bit more liquid. So the dry ingredients are 2 cups flour, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 3/4 of a cup sugar. Mix that together and then set it aside and get your wet ingredients going. You'll need 2 eggs, and you'll whisk those together separately. 3 bananas, and you would pre-mash those with whatever tool you have. Mix those 2 ingredients together, and if you want a little extra flavor, add that vanilla. And then in it goes into the two will mix together with whatever you want to add for added taste. So I use walnuts and I use chips, and that would be a 1/2 cup of each, or to your liking. So now I'm going to put it in the pan, and it's actually a pretty dense recipe. I would have to say it's dense when it's done too. And in the pan it goes. Pretty easy to do from this point. And I just want to spread it out a little bit. It's a pretty forgiving recipe. That's why I like it. And it's one that you can definitely do at home with your parents. So it's in the pan and ready to go in the oven, just like that. And I will show you what it looks like when it's done. It's kind of a dark, dense bread, and there's layers of chips and walnuts. So I hope you have time to make this at home. Don't get rid of those old bananas, because you can have a beautiful banana bread with chocolate chips and walnuts. And I thank you for joining me this morning. You have a good weekend.